77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Rev, we have once again someone whose voice needs to be heard, whose opinions need to be listened to as well. And I'm talking about Jonathan Wachtel.
Yes.
Global Affairs Analyst, former Director of Communications for Ambassador Nikki Haley, Senior Policy Advisor for the U.S. Mission to the UN. He works together with the White House on a host of issues. And we're very fortunate to have you with us today, Jonathan.
Pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you. So we've heard presidents over the years talk about Iran should not have nuclear weapons. We saw an agreement under President Obama that had a time limitation. I think after X number of years, it would sunset, and then Iran was free to do anything it wanted. Now we have a president who was far more aggressive, went after various facilities, and certainly we're in a safer place than we've been in many years vis-a-vis Iran, correct?
We're definitely in a place in which this cat and mouse stuff, finally we put our foot down and said, you know what, we're not messing around, and this needs to stop. Now, where this goes from here, it remains to be seen, but it definitely is a complete switch into what has happened over literally decades of engagement with the United Nations and with our partners, Germany, Britain, and France, on trying to contain whatever the Iranians have been doing in terms of uranium and enrichment and concerns around them racing to get nuclear weapons.
Is it possible to have comprehensive verification? I mean, given their history of deception, of hiding nuclear weapons or hiding enrichment facilities, can you really be certain that there's no ability to do this again?
Honestly, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible. Iran's about the size of putting two Texases together. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine the massive landmass and being able to look under every corner of a country that large. Of course, we're bigger, but that is a huge amount of territory. And the basic truth is that, for instance, the Natanz nuclear site or Fordow, these were discovered. They were clandestine sites that were discovered by intelligence. So it's not as if the Iranians were saying, hey, check out all our nuclear facilities. This is what we've got going on. They do have a track record of not disclosing stuff and us trying through intelligence sources to figure out what the heck's going on in that country.
Jonathan, the right, the conservatives, they're not on the same page with this. There are those who are very concerned about America going into war, and the fact that President Trump made it clear that, this was not going to be something that we would engage in. But here we are. How do we understand that?
It is what historically has happened, certainly within the Republican Party. We all, if you look at history and what happened, for instance, in entering World War II, there was tremendous resistance among the more isolationist wing of the Republican Party, in this case, to enter the war. And ultimately, it took, a lot of energy and convincing for President Roosevelt for us to actually enter that war. And my goodness, what sort of history would we be looking at now, or what world would we be living in now had the United States not intervened to try to stop the Nazis and to fight back at Japanese imperialism? Here we are again with those same, difficulties, struggles over what is the United States supposed to do. Are we the policemen of the world? Are we that world power that's to be leaned on to intervene at critical moments in world affairs because that's the United States and that's what we should be doing? Or do we really dismiss the wider world out there, focus internally on what matters to us as a country and focus on that? The basic truth is we live in a very interconnected world, and what happens in China affects us. What happens in the Middle East affects us.
Right.
From whether it's shipping of energy supplies or just shipping overall or manufacturing. We live in an interconnected world. So playing this belief that we can just, close down the rest of the world and just get on with our business, it's just not the same world anymore.
Dr. Ari Berman, who's the president of Yeshiva University, wrote a piece entitled "What If?" And the question has often been raised, what if America had bombed the railroad tracks leading to Auschwitz? What if we had been more engaged, when the war first began and did more to prevent the horrors of the Holocaust? What if there had been a state of Israel during that period? The results would have been far different. Now, we're not asking what if. We're talking about what was, what happened, right? The attack that took place, and then what now? So looking at what was, where do we go with what now?
What now? We are in uncharted territory. The reaction of the Iranian regime is kind of predictable, in which they're now saying they're not going to work and collaborate or have any relationship with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, which is the UN watchdog that works with countries around the world on peaceful nuclear activities, ranging from things as not scary unless you're a mosquito, of trying to control the mosquito vector population using atomic energy, or some of the medical applications of atomic energy, to all the way having peaceful energy plants around the world. And then they, of course, look at the non-proliferation treaty and trying to ensure that we have a world in which we're not having every country have a nuclear weapon, in which the exponentially the threat of some sort of nuclear fallout, whether accidental or deliberate, would happen in the world. So Iran essentially saying they're not going to cooperate with the IAEA, and actually we're getting signals, and this would be a major shift, that they may decide, they're signatories of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, which you may have heard of. If they withdraw from that, that means that weaponization is something that they are considering, and there's no, and if or whatever about it. That's really, if they would withdraw from that treaty, that means their gloves are off, and they're going to do whatever they believe is expedient for their national interests.
Jonathan, Rabbi mentioned what was and what now. What was? I'm thinking of the checkered past in relationship between the United States and Iran, going back to the time that there was a mutual respect and minimal political involvement between the U.S. and Iran. And then, of course, 1953, the coup took place. It became about oil, the Cold War, and the rise of Iranian nationalism. There are those who see America as the aggressor because of this history, because of this past. What do we say to that?
The basic truth, and you brought this out, in 1953, there was a coup that the United States and Great Britain organized, and it was around oil and access to oil and ensuring that there would be a relationship moving forward for those two countries that would benefit the two countries economically and geopolitically. Now, that's the 1950s. Fast forward, the United States actually was enjoying good relations with the Shah of Iran and that government that came in, next couple of decades after that, some 25 years, until the overthrow of the Shah. And the crazy situation is that, I mentioned the International Atomic Energy Agency. They were working, and so was the United States, on working on a peaceful energy use of nuclear plants across Iran that would provide the very type of peaceful use of nuclear energy moving forward. And the United States was very much involved in discussions with the Shah's people at the time. It was then after the Islamic Revolution in 1979, it became clear that, first of all, there's a government that's come in, a regime that's come in that is anathema to everything that the United States stands for. And then we had this hegemonic activity, this attempt to spread the Islamic Revolution that kicked in right away after 1979 and led to the point in which we saw that Iran had its fingers across the Middle East, from Lebanon into Gaza, into the West Bank, into Yemen, into Iraq, into Syria, very close relationships with our nemesis in Latin America, in Venezuela, and other parts of the country. These alliances with the North Koreans and others, in which it became a real problem.
Jonathan, we've got to take a break, because I want to come back to this, because I also want to talk about the fact that, there was an attempt at westernization and economic modernization when the Shah was in power. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And we are speaking with Jonathan Wachtel, Global Affairs Analyst, Director of Communications for former Ambassador Nikki Haley at the UN, Policy Advisor for the U.S. Mission to the UN. You've seen it on a number of networks. For the sake of ABC, let me mention he was only on Fox. He wasn't on any other station.
Yeah, I want to pick up where we left off, because, from 53 to 79, the Shah was there and modernization took place. But it was a mixture of modernization and repression, because he purchased billions of dollars in U.S. weapons and hosted American advisors. But the regime was also known for repression, including the SAVAK, S-A-V-A-K, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So people are referring back to that, and that's what sparked a sense of nationalism that cooperated in overthrowing the Shah. You can speak to that, please.
Well, I mean, at the time you had this interesting alliance. This is when the Shah was deposed, of the Islamists that are now in power, and those who support what they stand for. And, it's a significant amount of the population. It's not the majority. It's definitely the minority. Some say, something in the 30-something percentile of the population supports the Ayatollah and the theocracy that's in power right now in Iran. And then you had, at the time, a lot of progressives in Iran who were disgusted with the really oppressive measures that the Shah's Secret Service, as you mentioned, used and deployed, and felt that there needed to be a change. And so, in a way, we see kind of echoes of this alliance of Islamist ideology together with progressive perspectives on things kicking in. It's a theme that happens in countries around the world, including our own here, in which we're now seeing, what happened with the vote for the Democratic nominee for mayor, or whatever, we're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and protesters out, who are not Palestinian or Arab or whatever, but supportive of Hamas, for instance, in Hamas, which is a terrorist organization essentially. But this type of thing, these sort of unholy alliances that happen, it is a theme.
Right.
It happened then, and that's essentially what brought in the Ayatollah and got us into a situation in which then they took advantage of the situation and ensured that they secured their power. And then they themselves, over the years, have used oppression, deadly oppression, to suppress any sort of attempt to have a truly democratic system within Iran, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and that's the question. Will a democratic system work within that context, because first the president said no regime change, and now we're hearing the possibility of a regime change, and there's always been consequence to that. Rabbi?
You know, people talk about the situation now will lead to a revolution. Revolutions, from what I understand, are organic. You can't impose a revolution from the outside. Do you see the ingredients there for a revolution, or is there a lot more that has to happen before that takes place?
You know, the ingredients have been there for a revolution. There have been attempts. There have been uprisings. And we saw, the Green Uprising during the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. And we saw another one during the Biden administration. The problem is that the power, the Iranian, the Iranian authorities, the law enforcement, they have the power to crush this, and they've crushed it to such brutal extent that hundreds of thousands of people have died as a result, and people are languishing in prison because they're political prisoners. Many have died. It just sends reverberations of fear throughout the society there, in which, it gets to the point of, are you really going to stand up? Because you're going to be killed. You're going to be thrown in jail. Yeah. And it's just very hard for that ground swelling to happen. The understanding, and I mentioned this earlier in our discussion, it's a minority in terms of the percentage of Iranians who support the regime. The problem is they're holding the power, and they're going to do whatever it takes to stay in power. And if that means greater oppression of their people to ensure that happens, that's what they will do. We're already seeing chilling reports of executions as a result of what transpired from the Israelis and the U.S. activities, over the skies of Iran. And I would anticipate that would continue, this purging, which, of course, sends fear into the wider population that you're next if you try to do something.
Right.
So what is it about the persona of the president that enables him to do, not just to talk? For example, for years we heard presidents talk about, let's move the embassy to Jerusalem, the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. It was talk, no action. This president is elected, there's action with minimal talk. He just does. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. He said to Iran, no nuclear weapons, and he acted. There is something different here than we've seen in the past with other presidents. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. He is a disruptor, has always been a disruptor, and I think he relishes in that ability to change the tables and to enjoy that power and that ability to actually leave a mark, and he does it. This is what he does. Now, there are people who accuse an individual who does things like this as an autocratic leader, and we're hearing that complaint, criticism around the United States and certainly around the world over decisions, whether it had to do with NATO and participation in NATO, whether it has to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, what you said about Jerusalem. Yeah, these are bold, decisive decisions taken by the president, and he puts them in motion, and then the world or the society deals with the consequences after this has happened.
And this is quite different from the deal that was done under the Obama administration, because critics, especially in Israel and in the U.S. Congress, saw that and felt that the deal was too lenient. So here we have a president who's taking action, as Rabbi said. And, of course, he's going to get criticism no matter what you do. But it's a different stance on this.
Yeah. He's already getting the criticism. You see that. And the other part of this persona is he's okay with criticism. I mean, he doesn't want to hear it, but he can deal with it, and he can give it back. It's a different kind of presidency. I even saw something that got very testy with the press the other day. There were some words used Four-letter words. I didn't understand what they were.
Four-letter words, you mean?
You know, if you could explain them to me, either one of you gentlemen, I was totally non-understanding of it. But he takes a different path, and of course, whenever you assume leadership, you're gonna be open for criticism. That comes with the territory. You can't be a leader without being able to take criticism. You may not take it well, but you're going to get it, and you got to deal with it. But he doesn't back off because of fear of criticism.
You mentioned, go ahead, respond.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, we'll look at the Obama decision to actually have the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, worked out with Iran. He pushed that through, and presidents do this. He pushed that through despite congressional opposition to it, which made it impossible for what he did to get signed off by Congress. So it was an utter presidential decision. Now, did Obama have the courage, for instance, when Bashar Assad, the Syrian leader, ended up gassing his own people when a red line had been crossed, to actually take action? No, he didn't. Did Trump take action? Yes, he did, actually, when he took over and there had been an incident. And we see that in President Trump, we see a persona of a person who's willing to just go for it.
Jonathan Wachtel, this is why it's good to have someone who knows, and listening to the person who knows, because if you just read the emails that are sent out, or you read the first few pages of certain papers, you wouldn't know. And you think that you had the information, but you don't. So you're a real treasure for us.
Yeah, always, Jonathan. Good to have you on the program. I appreciate your grasp of history, too, and understanding the perspectives accordingly. So thanks.
I appreciate you guys, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stay tuned for more of The Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.